Conquering the past. Mastering the passive voice in simple past tense. Hello everyone. Today we are diving deeper into the world of passive voice, particularly focusing on how it's used in the simple past tense. We'll cover a very interesting aspect of it. When the doer is mentioned using by. This may seem tricky at first, but don't worry, by the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of it. Let's get started. Before we jump into the specifics, let's briefly recap what the passive voice is. In English, when the subject of the sentence is the recipient of the action, rather than the doer, we say the sentence is in the passive voice. It's structured as subject plus was, were plus past participle of the main verb. Here's an example. The cake was eaten. The subject, the cake, did not perform any action. Instead, it received the action. That's what makes this sentence passive. Now, in many instances, even though we use the passive voice, we still want to mention who or what performed the action. This is where by comes into play. The doer of the action can be added to the passive sentence using the preposition by. Here's how our previous example would look when we add the doer. The cake was eaten by John. The subject, the cake, remains the receiver of the action, but now we know who performed the action: John. You might ask, why bother mentioning the doer in a passive voice sentence? Isn't the whole point of using passive voice to focus on the action or the receiver of the action, not the doer? That's a great question. We use by in the passive voice when the doer of the action is less important than the action itself, but still needs to be mentioned for context or completeness. Here's another example. The window was broken by the storm. The important information is that the window was broken, but mentioning the storm adds context to the sentence. And there you have it, folks. We've covered how to use by to mention the doer in the passive voice in the simple past tense. Remember, the key is that even though we're using the passive voice to emphasize the action or the recipient, we can still include the doer using by for additional context. Keep practicing this structure and you'll master it in no time. Stay tuned for our next lesson where we'll tackle more English grammar complexities. Until then, keep learning and happy practicing.